Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Hi, folks. Cesar here. Thanks for joining us. We have a great show this evening. We're going to focus on the immigration issue here locally and in our country. I have great guests this evening, so you're going to want to stick around for the entire show. My first guest is with Immigrants First. Please welcome Alexandra Ribe. She's a partner. Ribe. She's a partner. Your group has been on before.
Yeah.
So we love having you on, and we hope you guys can come again, because this is a pretty serious topic for a lot of folks. So let's just start at the top. DACA.
Yeah.
Where are we? What's happening? Let's just start there and see where we go.
So obviously, back in September, President Trump said that he would no longer be accepting initial DACA applications or renewal applications starting March 5 of 2018. Then that was struck down by a district court judge. They tried to fast track it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court denied hearing it fast tracked. So it's now going to the Court of Appeals. So it still has a process. But what's happening now currently, what's happening with DACA is that you can submit renewal applications if you already have had DACA in the past. So anyone who's had DACA can submit a renewal application to continue to have DACA.
For how long?
So once it's approved, it'll be valid for 2 years.
Okay.
So you'll have DACA for another 2 years, and there's no time period before your DACA expires by which you have to apply. You can apply at any point. If your DACA is going to expire within a year, you can apply, and then you'll get it for 2 years from the date of approval. You can't do initial applications. That's the difference right now. So if you've never applied for DACA in the past, or you were too young, or whatever the case, you never had it, you can't submit an initial application. And then the other big change is you can't do advanced parole, which was allowing people to leave the United States, either to visit their family or do some kind of employment.
Sure. Yeah. So that was going to be my next. So what then do people that were thinking about leaving, what are they supposed to do at this point?
Well, they certainly can't leave.
Yeah.
So they should not leave. Okay. Because if they leave without advanced parole, then they're not going to be able to come back into the country. And many of these people don't have a way by which to come back through like a family petition or something like that. So they certainly should not leave unless they want to leave for good. And unfortunately, if they wanted to travel, then they'd be abandoning their DACA, abandoning their status in the United States. They cannot leave.
Wow. So how many people does this affect? Because this is, I'm hearing like a couple million. I mean,
so I think the current statistics are that there's about 700,000 people that
known.
700,000 people who submitted DACA applications at some point. Okay. So there are 700,000 people that are eligible for this renewal process. And we don't know how long the renewal process is going to last, because it all depends on what happens at the Court of Appeals level. And then whichever side wins undoubtedly is going to take it back up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will hear it eventually. So we don't know how long that renewal process is going to last for. We don't know if Congress is going to have a fix for it. We don't know. Right.
Full disclosure, Congress isn't going to do anything. That's just my gut. I mean, it's November is going to come up real fast in terms of the elections this year. Let's talk about our DOJ, Jeff Sessions.
Yeah.
Let's talk about him real quick. So he's got a lot to weigh here. He's got a lot going on. What he decides or what he's told to decide. How's that going to affect and play out?
So Attorney General Jeff Sessions has done a few things recently that very much impact the immigrant community and impact their families. One of those things is, as the Attorney General, he can certify cases to himself. And he can also publish memos to the Executive Office of Immigration and Review, which is EOIR. So there's been a couple of cases that he's certified to himself. One, which affects a lot of people that are seeking asylum, is that he certified a case to himself, which means that he's essentially told the public that he's going to issue a decision on this particular case. The case at hand is whether people who have been the victim of private criminal activity can seek asylum. what he's really going after is domestic violence. Okay, so there was a Board of Immigration Appeals decision in 2014, which said that women who suffered from domestic violence in their home country, that was a protected ground for asylum. So, for example, in my practice, when I have a woman come to me and I know that she suffered domestic violence in her home country, which unfortunately is common in a lot of Central American countries where I have a lot of clients, I've always in the past thought, okay, that's a pretty strong case. Usually I could probably win this person asylum. But Jeff Sessions may turn that on its head and get rid of that provision for people. And then domestic violence survivors, people who have fled their abuser and come to the United States, would not be able to seek asylum because of that abuse.
So is the thinking that people are abusing that path, or what's
no,
what's
he's
the
not
logic
necessarily
there?
thinking, I don't know that he's thinking that. It's just that the definition for asylum is very complicated. And the biggest complication is that you have to, the harm that you're fearing, so obviously asylum seekers, they fear a harm in their home country.
Sure.
But the harm that you're fearing has to be on account of a protected ground. It can't just be for any old reason, right? Like it has to be on account of one of 5 reasons, and there's 5 of them. And the way that domestic violence survivors have been able to win asylum is under one of those 5 categories, which is a particular social group. And that terminology has been defined very broadly in case law, and I think Attorney General Sessions is trying to limit that definition, and he's trying to say that if you were abused as a spouse or a girlfriend or a partner, and you were abused because of that, that doesn't qualify you as somebody in a particular social group. So he's trying to limit the definition of asylum, essentially.
Great.
Great.
Yeah. Again, I could understand if that was like a path that was being abused, but do we have any numbers in terms of like how many people are actually leveraging that? Yeah.
I don't know any numbers in terms of how many people are specifically seeking asylum as victims of domestic violence. I can say that in the last few years, there's definitely has been an increase in the number of people, specifically from Central America, which is where many of my clients are. And there's a lot of Central American folks locally in this area, in the Fairfax area. A lot of the people who are recent entrants, meaning people that have come maybe 2014, 2013 onwards, most of those people are seeking asylum in the United States. They're not always domestic violence victims. A lot of times they're being threatened by gangs, or families are being threatened by gangs, but the majority, if not almost all of the people that have recently come into the United States are seeking asylum. And so I think part of what President Trump and Attorney General Sessions is doing is trying to stop more people from coming into the United States and trying to limit the number of people that actually gain legal status by coming in and then claiming asylum.
So I just want to make sure I absorb this.
Yeah.
So criminals, gang members, and rapists are coming into the country, and people that are trying to flee the criminals and gang rapists are trying to get into the country.
Yeah.
So I think I think when a country of immigrants starts turning away immigrants, we've failed to divine the purpose of our country.
Right.
Right. I mean, we are a country. Look, I get it. There are people that are going to abuse the system, but unless you are pointing to very specific abuses of this channel, of this path, I just think that's cold-hearted.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that a lot of people, particularly critics of, or people that want stronger immigration enforcement, a lot of times when I hear arguments, I think that they don't necessarily know the legal framework that we currently have. So someone who comes into the country, they first have to, first of all, they're often detained. They have to pass an initial step before they can even apply for asylum. They have to pass what's called a credible fear interview with an asylum officer, where they tell their story, and then the officer has to say that there is a likelihood that they will prevail in an asylum case eventually. So there are certain steps, and if they don't pass that initial hurdle, then they're sent back. They get an expedited removal, and they don't even get to see a judge. They're
How
sent
do they
back.
get into the country to begin with? I mean, are these people that are crossing the borders illegally? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so we have clients, not everybody crosses the border illegally, obviously. Many people do. And so some people will present themselves at a port of entry. A port of entry is like, you know, like when you're driving, if you ever went to Mexico and you see like all those, like the cars that they have to stop and they're CBP officers. So that's a point of entry. So some people will go up to a CBP officer and say, I want asylum, or I'm afraid to go back. And so that's one way. Other times they'll sneak in with a smuggler or a coyote, and then they'll get apprehended. They'll be caught inside the United States. And then other times people have ways to get in, right? Like sometimes people are here on a tourist visa, so they come in regular style
stay,
airport, and then they overstay because maybe they're afraid to go back or whatever, their circumstances change.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this. In terms of what Attorney General Sessions is doing, what else is that impacting in terms of?
So so he's doing, okay, so that's one thing he's doing. Another thing that he is doing, I don't know if he's doing this, but he is certified another case to himself, and he said that he's going to make a decision on it, is for something called the provisional waiver, which is also a remedy that many folks, especially in the Fairfax area, are eligible for. So provisional waiver is for somebody who oftentimes is married to a U.S. citizen, but they came in illegally in the first instance. They came in, they weren't inspected and admitted, they just kind of snuck in. And they're not eligible to just get their green card in the United States. They first have to leave and ask for a waiver, but you can ask for the waiver inside the United States.
So is this the person or the spouse?
The spouse would petition for their undocumented relative, and then after that petition's approved, they would request the waiver. So essentially, it's a way for somebody who's married to a U.S. citizen but didn't come in legally to be able to get their permanent residency, to get their green card. It's the process to do that. But again, Jeff Sessions is trying to limit it, so he's now certified a case to himself, and he is trying to limit people from potentially being able to pursue that process if they're in removal proceedings.
So again, I go back to numbers. What are the estimated numbers of people coming in through that provision? Is it?
Well, the provisional waiver, there are a significant amount of people that are doing it. But they're limiting the number of people that are going to be able to do it if they're in removal proceedings.
Okay, let's come back to that topic because I want the folks to really drill down on that. So folks, we'll come back and pick up this topic here, so stay with us.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Hey, Hard, what's this? That's my resignation. You're resigning? Why? You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit. Oh, I forgot. I'll do better. Please don't quit on me.
Don't let your heart quit on you. Get your uncontrolled high blood pressure to a healthy range before it's too late.
So you can't save money? That's easy as pie. Brown bagging lunch instead of going out. $6 save times 5 days a week times 10 years is $21,000. That's a lot of lettuce. Small changes today, big bucks tomorrow. Feedthepig.org.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls. But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that.
Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat. to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar here. Thanks for coming back. With me is our guest from Immigrants First, Alexandra Ribe. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Let's finish up this provisional waiver status. So we were kind of thinking it's big numbers, small numbers.
I mean, it is fairly big numbers, but I think the point is that it's a manner in which somebody who's oftentimes married to a U.S. citizen can eventually obtain permanent residency, which as a country, we want that, right?
Sure.
Like we want families to stay together, particularly.
We value families.
Right, and I will also say that to even qualify for this provisional waiver, which I won't get too much into the semantics, you can't have really any criminal record, like only very minor traffic offenses. So we're talking about clean people that have family in the United States who are U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents, and the only issue that they have is that they came unlawfully, meaning that they came in the first instance without a visa or without being inspected. So these are the types of folks that we would want to gain legal status in the United States, and potentially this decision by Attorney General Sessions would limit those people that I'm discussing, the good folks that have no criminal record, that have U.S. citizen families, from being able to obtain their permanent residency.
Sure. And just on that topic, because I'm kind of that way, I'm kind of a troublemaker.
Okay.
I would submit to people, and I have, that everyone is a criminal. If you drive on our highways and you do 56 and a 55, technically you are breaking the law.
Right.
If you drive 60 and a 55, you are breaking the law.
Right, so everyone's done it, yeah.
Everyone breaks the laws every day. It's just who gets caught at this.
Well, and I'll also say that immigration law, the Immigration and Nationality Act, which is the legal code that governs immigration law, that's civil act, right? So when people say that these people are criminals, well, they're not. They're not criminals. If they violated a civil act, that's not criminal.
You go to civil court.
Right, and in fact, immigration proceedings are civil.
That's my point, right? I've had a speeding ticket or two, so I know. I mean, you go to those traffic court, or civil court.
Right. Which is even crazier because people are detained in immigration detention facilities for sometimes years.
Wow.
And unfortunately, the Supreme Court just had a very bad decision a couple months ago, I want to say, maybe a couple weeks ago, which said that people can be detained indefinitely in civil immigration detention facilities.
So good point, because that leads me to where I kind of want TPS, right?
Yeah.
What if I have status?
Yeah.
How do I maintain that? I mean, let's level set. TPS and people that have it.
Okay. So TPS is short for temporary protected status. So what temporary protected status is when a country is going through something very serious, like a war or some kind of natural disaster, then the U.S. will sometimes designate that country for TPS, like Syria recently got TPS, or some countries that were facing the Ebola outbreak got TPS. And a long time ago, so 1998 for Honduras and 2001 for El Salvador, those countries got TPS. And ever since, people who qualified for TPS, which there are some certain, you'd have to have come from those countries and been in the United States for Honduras since 98, for El Salvador since 2001, continuously since that time, renewing your TPS continuously. You can't have more than two very small misdemeanors, so you have to be a person of good moral character. But for those two countries in particular, so there's a set of like maybe 10 countries that currently have TPS, and the requirements are different depending on when they were designated. Right. For Honduras and El Salvador, though, people have had TPS for years and years, right? Like 2 decades in some instances, and the program for those two countries is ending in 2018 for Honduras and 2019 for El Salvador. So those people that have had a work permit, a driver's license, social security number, everything for the last 15 to 20 years, the program is ending. They will lose their status.
Yeah, so what does that mean? I mean, what do they have to do? Do they hide?
Well, I mean, sometimes they need to see an immigration lawyer, really. I mean, they, you know, whether it's our firm or another firm, they need to see an immigration attorney because they're going to lose their status, and they need to figure out, is there another path by which they can get some other more permanent status, because their TPS will expire. And a lot of times the people have to act now. For example, there's something called advanced parole where they have to leave the country and come back. So I advise that for a lot of people who have TPS, because that gives them that lawful entry that they need, and then they can
So that would
adjust
be
their
treated
status.
differently than the DACA, obviously.
Well,
right?
DACA had that,
Right.
and a lot of times we did advise DACA people to leave, but they can't get it anymore. So it's not on the table anymore for DACA, but for TPS it still is.
Okay.
So a lot of times I suggest that people leave, but they have to consult an immigration attorney first, just to make sure there's no problems with them leaving and then being able to come back in. But unfortunately, that's going to open up a lot of people to potentially being put in removal proceedings because they're going to lose their DACA. And some people have a way by which to get permanent residency, like through a family member or something like that. Other people don't, and then they'll just be out of status, and they have to know their rights. They have to be careful about, you know, driving without permission, all that kind of stuff.
All these requests, sticking back to the TPS, all these requests, this is worry about Virginia.
Yeah.
There's got to be a ton of people making these requests. How quickly are those processed?
Well,
I mean, what's
yeah, I mean, USCIS right now which is the kind of I mean, there's offices all over the country, but USCIS is the government agency that issues benefits.
Okay.
They are extremely backed up right now. Like,
surprise.
No surprise. But they've always been backed up, don't get me wrong. But it's to a new level. Like, I've had green card applications that are straightforward, like no questionable things in there, should really be like a 6-month thing and are taking 2 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, and then the DACA, I mean, for TPS renewals, those are also taking a really long time.
But then isn't the individual then exposed in terms of...
If they submit something, are they exposed?
I mean,
yeah,
it's a
I mean,
catch-22.
I mean, you bring up an interesting point, right? Because that was always the fear with DACA when DACA came out, is this just a way for the government to get everyone's info and then they have everyone's info?
That would be, I'm paranoid, so I would just assume that's what they're doing.
And we can't necessarily assume that's not what they're doing, but I will say this.
We're talking about Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, but I will say this, logistically, right now the immigration courts are so backed up that I'll have court for somebody and then they'll come back, they'll be set for their trial in 5 years, right? So I'll go to court with you tomorrow and then the judge will say, okay, come back in 2023 and we'll do your court hearing. So they're so backed up that there's unless they allocated so much more money to hiring you judges, like in Arlington, Virginia, which is the court for anyone that lives in Virginia, there's not enough there's not enough space right now for new judges. Like they used to be 1 floor, now it's 3 floors, and they're already running out of courtrooms.
Is that just Virginia or DC, Maryland, or just each district?
So Arlington, Virginia covers anyone who lives anywhere in Virginia or anyone in DC. Baltimore covers anyone who lives in Maryland.
Okay.
So it just depends on where you live. But there's not enough judges, court space, trial attorneys, Office of Chief Counsel attorneys. There's not enough people to logistically put everybody in removal proceedings that submitted a DACA or TPS application.
So there is some humanity to the process.
I don't know if there's humanity. It's just that there's not enough money to do it.
Well, I mean, my fear was someone submits and then they overstay a date or something, they automatically get flagged.
And but what I'm saying is that they can get flagged, but if we start so as I said, there's 700,000 people that submitted DACA applications, and then I don't know how many people submitted TPS applications, but let's say another I don't know, 400,000 or something. So we're talking like 1.5 million people. We can't all overnight put 1.5 million people through the court system, because everybody, unless you have an old deport order, everybody has their rights to see an immigration judge and fight their case. And I mean, that's in the Immigration Nationality Act. So that can't necessarily be taken away by President Trump or Jeff Sessions. And a lot of times people are eligible for something, asylum or cancellation or removal for people who've been here a long time. So it's not that there's humanity. Like, I don't know that President Trump is super humane about it, although he does say that he has a soft spot for DACA kids. I don't know if that's true or not. But logistically, you can't put 1.5 million people in removal proceedings overnight, because already, as it is, it's taking 5 to 10 years for people who are in the system to get through it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Even more sometimes.
Wow. So what's your recommendation? Someone watching has a family member. What's your recommendation if they are concerned with their status, or just? I
mean, my recommendation is to see an immigration attorney at least for a consultation, and not a notario, someone who actually has a law license, and somebody who specializes in immigration law. Like our office, we only handle immigration law. That's why we're called Immigrants First. We only handle immigration law because immigration law is very complicated. And there's some attorneys that kind of dabble in it, but they might not know all of the forms of relief that are available to somebody. So I would say make a consultation with an immigration attorney and see if you're doing everything you need to make sure you're applying for what you are eligible for. If you have an old deportation order, maybe you could do like a motion to reopen, to try and reopen it. Maybe there's different petitions that are available for you. So you want to know what can you do now, and I would do a consultation. Most offices don't charge that much money just for a consultation. And if you're not eligible for anything, which unfortunately some people are, at least you found out, right? At least you went to a reputable office, and now you know. And also, like at our office, we can tell people, okay, you don't qualify for anything now, but if you ever had any problems with ICE, here's what you're supposed to do. Give us a call. Then you'll this is what we can do to help you. So at least you'll know, okay, maybe I don't qualify for anything today, but my mind is a little bit at ease because I know that I will qualify for something if I'm put in removal. I know my rights. I have an attorney's business card, so my family can call them. Like I have a drawer where I have my important paperwork so that I know where it is in case I am picked up by ICE.
So real quick, Fairfax County Sheriff Kincaid recently said
he would not honor ICE detainers. She would not honor ICE detainers, which is fabulous because it means that less people will be put in removal proceedings.
Great. Alexandra, thank you so much.
Thank
Folks,
you.
We'll be back for our next segment. Please stick around. We've got some more topics to cover.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs, or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfrip at AOL.com.
Here, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read. and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America and Reading is Fundamental.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Cesar here. Thanks for coming back. We've got the topic of this evening is immigration, and we've got a very special guest here, Dr. Klara Bilgin. I'm sorry, I try to get people's names right. People butcher mine all the time. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about this whole diversity visa lottery thing that's happening. First of all, let's level set the folks on what it is, how many people are affected, and how it actually comes into play here. So your background with it.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here and speak about the Diversity Visa Lottery Program. First, because it is a critical topic, and it seems that next year may be the last year for the program. I hope not. And second, because I feel disturbed by the fact that a lot of the information that has been in the media and a lot of the pronouncements are outright faulty or disingenuous.
So let's start
or by people who have no idea what the program is and what the program does.
So let's talk about what is the program, right?
Sure.
It's a very specific and sort of tight controlled program.
Yes, and it's a very unique program as well. I think that it is only the US, with the exception of a few other smaller countries, that have such a program. So the Diversity Visa Lottery Program is a program that allows, that basically gives about 50,000 visas per year to winners from countries from around the world, with the exception of the biggest countries that already have a lot of population in the US. Yes. For example, countries like UK, Canada, Mexico, China, India are excluded because they have significant population already in the United States. But it covers basically the rest of the world. And every single year, about 50,000 green cards are given through lottery. So first of all, when we say lottery, there is this kind of confusion. What does it mean?
You're not winning necessarily, right?
You're not winning. It means that you are allowed within a particular period, usually between October and November, for a 1-month period, to individually put electronic entry in the system of I believe it is the State Department, the branch that deals with the Diversity Visa Lottery. And you can have only 1 entry per year. So usually every year about 15 million people apply. 0.3 may win, about 50,000 visas.
So they're
are
selected.
Given.
They're first selected.
So there is a self-selection. It is up to you whether you want to apply. Yes, and a lot of people apply. Millions of people apply. And then through the lottery moment is that they are randomly selected. So you don't, you cannot do anything to increase your chance. You are randomly selected or not. And the chance is really, really small. Out of these 50,000 visas that are given, about 45,000 people came last year. So
what are some of the sort of requirements around it? So first you're selected.
So if you're randomly selected, there are requirements that you have to meet. It is not that anybody can come. Actually, I can speak from experience because the visa was launched in 1995. I applied in 1997, and I basically got it in 1998. So I personally went through the process, and it was not at all easy. First of all, you have to have special educational criteria. I believe it is at the level of high school or equivalence of 2 years of practical experience and job training. And this is the basis of it. But then you have to provide detailed educational, health, and police records. In my case, for example, I went from the lottery for the state of Bulgaria. I did not have my TB records. I knew that I had TB shot, but I didn't have the records. I had to retake the shot in order to qualify. And I would have been automatically disqualified if I did not produce that. So you have to go and have a health check. I hear from several sources that, oh, we import diseases. It is not the case. You really have to demonstrate that you're a healthy individual and that you are not a healthy threat to American society in order to come here. And then there is the other misperception that in some way we are giving, beyond the winning, we are encouraging those people to come. And I would say it is not the case. It is mostly a self-selection. You win the lottery, then you go through the process of being interviewed, presenting all your documentation, which are then reviewed, and then usually the consular service in your country would make a decision whether they would allow you to proceed. And if you're allowed to proceed, this means that you basically are to relocate yourself and possibly your family to the United States.
That's the differentiator, right? There's a very high bar for the people that do come by this method. They don't have existing family or support structure in the States, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
so
the thing is that if I come through HB1, for example, yes, or through a student visa, F1 visa, I would have an institution behind me that would do most of the paperwork and would help me with relocation and logistics. If I come through the green card lottery, the so-called green card lottery, it is so on me. Usually I may have somebody that I know, an acquaintance, or if I'm lucky, a family member, but I would have to find the money to relocate to the US, to have the capability to find a job, to rent a place, to do all the necessary work to start a new life.
You're an entrepreneurial at
You're
that point.
entrepreneurial. And that's why, for me, these people who are able to do it, with all the disadvantages of not having the family network, the professional backing, these are for me the new pioneers. If you do it and you don't give up, and you're competing with Americans for jobs, and you're able to get a job and to start a new life, hey, there is something that is special about you, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yes. So there is a process of self-selection, which is very rarely mentioned when we speak about the program. The second element, which is kind of really critical, is the universality of the program. The president and also some of the critiques of the program frequently say that we don't get the best and the brightest because this is not professional capability-based program. Actually, as a political scientist and person who travels around the world, and I have interviewed possibly over 100 people who are applying or have won the green card lottery, I have found that this is the most valuable thing about the program. It's universality. For people around the world, and whether it was the mother in Benin that had two daughters that tells me that she has been applying for the last 10 years, or my friend in Bulgaria who has been applying for 18 and tells me that she would continue by the time she is 60, which would be 2030. For them, the fact that this doesn't require you to be well connected, to be rich, or to have a PhD is the beauty of it. Because it impersonifies this American ideal that we are all equal and have the same right to have happy and fulfilling life. Every country has a program, every Western European country usually has a program that brings the best and the brightest, yes, and there's a brain drain. But none of them have a program which is so symbolically powerful that tells us everyone can do it. And this is the magnetic pull of the program, the fact that it distributes hope equally. And when
you have to be committed, you have to have faith in the system.
Yes, and you know, when I travel, for example, I do election observation, international election observation with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. So I frequently travel to observe elections in the post-communist and the former Soviet Union countries. And the thing I see is that in these countries, it doesn't matter how qualified you are, how bright you are, there are circumstances that may prevent you to achieve things in life. You may be living under an authoritarian regime, you may be not part of the elite and well-connected class, but you may be a very talented person. Yes, it is not like in the US where being talented and achieving things usually goes hand in hand. In the rest of the world, because of the political circumstances, things are different. It is mostly these people that are usually well-educated, aspiring, clever, but find themselves in, uncomfortable circumstances. They're the ones that are really most inspired and dedicated to the green card process. So for me, this is really a great symbol of hope. Whenever I travel, and if I'm there September, October, November, and I meet different families, whether, in Belarus, in Ukraine, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, people would come to me and ask me something about the green card lottery, that they are applying, what are their chances. It's a conversation opener. And I see for them, it is really this pull of the American dream that everybody can get it. And the interesting thing is that it's even more powerful outside of the cities. Yes, the city elite, the global city elite is now the one that has access to most of the privileges, whether in their own country or abroad. But it is the people in the villages. Actually, when I travel to the villages, and I would hear somebody would tell me, oh, my neighbor won the lottery, now he and his family is there, and we are so excited about America, this is so good. It kind of transforms how not only the city elite looks at America, but also people in the far corners of the world. Yes, and this is very beneficial to us. So for me, I call this program. It is, program Hope, and it epitomizes two great things. There is a moment of self-selection, and it is huge. And there is also this moment that it is universal, and that's why it has such a huge appeal. And the fact is that it is also a very small portion of our immigration inflow. Most of our programs, HB1, F1, whether for students, whether for workers, they are based on your qualifications. So previously we had about 1 million immigration flow, and this would be 50,000, so it is about 5% that is distributed on a universal basis. And I think it is small, but it is very valuable because it is uniquely American.
Absolutely. I mean, just what you've described is, quite frankly, a filtering of the people that aren't or don't have that entrepreneurial spirit. Because first of all, in order to apply for it, you have to acknowledge the requirements, and you have to believe enough in the system that I will leave my family, the language, the country I grew up in for this far distance land.
Yes,
so
and it's not easy.
When we come back, I want to drill down on this too. So folks, join us for the last segment, folks. We'll be right back.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Wanted some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Nothing very funny about ripped off money, nothing very nice. Homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches, don't play with fire. Yeah.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent. Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar here, back with our final segment and our guest, Klara Bilgin with the Virginia International University. Thank you again so much for staying. This is a very, very great topic.
My pleasure.
I want to drill into your perception, your view from a geopolitical perspective. How is this being viewed? How are the people out there looking at this?
So this is really a great question and something that I have found we are not discussing enough. When we look at immigration, we tend to look largely from a domestic point of view, forgetting that we are a global power in a very competitive world and we are going to face major international challenges. So everything we do domestically from now on would have major repercussions for our power and, I would say, hegemonic stance globally. And the same with this small program. Yes, we talk that the diversity visa lottery is relatively small. It offers up to 50,000 visas per year, and that it provides disproportionate amount of hope. But it also provides a disproportionate amount of geopolitical clout. And for example, I want to give you an example. Yes, 15,000 people apply each year. 50,000 people win. But much bigger amount is invested in the goodwill and the well-being of this country. Why? And again, from my conversations, what I can deduce is that people who see this as something that can give them access to the American dream feel invested in America. Yes? If you are somewhere in a village in Georgia, or somewhere in Macedonia, why would you wish the good of America and, you know, root for American dominance and global power? Well, you would do that if you believe that one day you or your kids can have a shot at the American dream, that you can come here as an immigrant through the diversity visa, that your children can come here and study, get a higher education, that you can someday come through exchange program. Yes, you have to have something to make you invested in this country. And frankly, in the last two decades, we have been very good at extending this investment abroad through different exchanges, coming from this, you know, starting from this program up to different school and educational exchanges and professional exchanges and so on. So this is how you basically bring people in and you extend soft power to them. So for me, the diversity visa lottery is a great instrument of soft power, and we have it on the cheap. Yes, we don't pay a lot of money for it.
So real quick, I just on the prompter, we have a phone call from Andrew from Richmond wants to know if this program is in any way in any danger of being dissolved or in the future being somehow curtailed.
Unfortunately, it is very much in danger.
Yeah.
Politically, we can say that the program is an orphan because there is no strong constituency for this program domestically. Senator Schumer was one of the initiators. He had recently backtracked, and frankly, the American public doesn't know enough about it. And what it has been hearing recently has been very much on the negative side or misinformation. So I'm so afraid that there is no constituency to stand up for it. And that's my point of appearing to your program and speaking to it, as I feel that both the program is valuable, very valuable, but the international influence of this program is much bigger than the numbers. And I can tell you that when I won, this meant that all my family got invested in the American dream, not to come here, but to support this country.
Sure.
And it was not trivial. It so happened that my father at the time, was working for some of the NATO structures. Well, Bulgaria is a country with dual identity. Big part is pro-Russian, big part was pro-Western during the 90s. And in a lot of countries in Eastern Europe, there is this dual identity fighting. And the Russians have been really good at providing some kind of carrots and influencing public opinion and so on. But this program, on the other hand, has been attracting the other part. So when this happened to me, my father, who was working in kind of, the NATO structure, he made sure that whatever was happening to be at the benefit of the Western powers and the US. Now, multiply this by the 50,000 families, mostly in Europe, Asia, and Africa. And you would see that you don't have only people who come here. You have families that are invested in their children. You have indivisible network of human connections that prop this country and wish it well-being from abroad.
So for me, I view this initiative, the State Department should own it for this reason, because you have a pool of future ambassadors.
Yes.
You have a pool of future ambassadors that have gone through and have lived the dream, that can then take that back to their countries and promote
And we
our
were
values.
so good of having these kind of programs in the last 2 decades. But I feel now that we have been disinvesting. And this program is just one example. I work with international students. I'm a dean at the School of Public and International Relations at Virginia International University. 85% of our students come from abroad. And you know what? We are very proud because they pay a manageable tuition. Their parents can sell a plot of land and bring them here, and they experience the American dream without being the top of the top, without being rich. But recently, in the last year, we see that a lot of our students are considering other places. We hear from the marketing department that, the international students market has been relocated and reshaped. Much more in the last year have decided not to apply necessarily to US. We have record numbers of applications to Canada, record numbers of applications to Northern European countries, to UK, to Australia. And from what I hear, something that for me is the most dangerous and disturbing pattern is that we have a big pool coming from China. We heard that a lot of students from Pakistan, Central Asian countries are given scholarships to go to China. And we're talking about human potential and what it means, these invisible ties that bring people from abroad to this country, but they also create a great goodwill for this country. Well, this is the same with international students. When international students come, I see they go through the cultural shock, but then they adopt the values of this country. They start to learn what it means to be an American. Yes? This becomes their second motherland. And whether they stay or go back, and a lot of them go back, and they are willing to go back because they have an American education that gives them good credentials. They can find job at home. When they go back, they go with this love and loyalty, which cannot be bought, yes? Whether you go back to Mongolia, whether you go back to Uzbekistan, or to, a country like Ecuador, if you have had the student experience in the US, you bring something with you back. So for me, the fact that we have this new trend of the international students market becoming very quickly reoriented away from the US, not so much this year, but I can see the trend. And if this trend is expedited in the last 2, 3, 5 years, 10 years down the road, we would see Chinese universities, providing scholarships by the thousands and bringing people from all around the world. And guess what? Which model is the new generation going to follow and acknowledge? If you have millions that would not be here, we would be losing both income, we would be losing brain power, and we would be losing the share of international students that would not be coming here. So this is very concerning for me. The second thing that I found very concerning is from an international point of view. And again, the debate so far about immigration, unfortunately, has been very domestically rooted. And if you look internationally, we had really two great decades in the 1990s, unipolar moment, as the Soviet Union was going down. We were thinking that we would be really the only model in the world of democracy, value of human rights, rule of law. But in the last decade, we have seen the rise of authoritarian powers with strong authoritarian models. And I speak here about Russia, which may be the disruptor of the international system, but China, which is really the long-time threat. Yes? And they both have their ways of creating and upholding human capital. If we speak about Russia, we see that, for example, they give Russian passports to Russian minorities in countries around, in the near abroad, yes, as a way of disrupting those countries, but also as a way of creating these attachments and loyalties. So they would give to some of the Russian minorities in the Baltic states, in eastern Ukraine, as they gave passports to a lot of people in Donbass who claim themselves to be a Russian minority, and also in the frozen conflict zones around Georgia. Well, this is one way of propping your population capital.
Wow.
And look about China. 1.37 billion people. And we're talking that in the next, up to 2030, they're hoping to get 500 million people out of poverty and into the middle class. So we are going to be in global competition with China, which would have close to 1.4 billion people. Yes. Do we really have the luxury at the moment to do what we're doing? Basically, treading American society and reinforcing and creating new cleavages based on race, based on ethnicity, based on place of origin, and everything else.
Everything you described is anti-American at its core.
Yes.
Because our strength is in the diversity of our people.
And in humans. When we speak about the country and what makes a country powerful, yes, natural resources matter, geopolitical resources matter, military infrastructure matters, but the most important thing is the human capital. So if you start to push down, dissipate, throw out, hunt, yes, criminalize your human capital, at the moment in which we know we are going to face major global competition in the next 5 to 10 years from China, we are basically, shooting ourselves in the foot.
Those are wise words, Klara. Dr. Bilgin, thanks so much.
It was really a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I want to have you back because you started to touch on some things I think we need to really think about long term. So thank you. Folks, Cesar here. Thanks again for joining us. We're going to keep this topic going. So again, appreciate your time this evening, and we'll see you soon on a future show.
Thank you so much.
Issue.